Housing Development Progress. Number one and the best. Housing Development Progress. Number one. Number one. Housing Development Progress. Number one and the best. Housing Development Progress. Number one. Housing Development Progress. In Nigeria. Housing Development Progress. In Africa. Housing Development Program and the globe. Number one, Housing Development Program.
It's a beautiful day. Welcome to another informative episode of Housing Development, your one-stop program for everything housing in Nigeria and beyond. As always, I am your housing diva, Fleur Oni. The building and construction industry is one of the most important sectors of any economy. The significance of the industry is often measured by its contribution to the gross domestic product, GDP. However, the sector contributes only 30% of the GDP, which is far less than 70% recommended by the World Bank. On the program today, we shall be looking at hike in the price of building materials and its impact on cost of housing in Nigeria, and also the impact of alternative building materials to housing provision in Nigeria. This and more will be coming your way right after we see the news making rounds in the sector.
The Council of Registered Builders of Nigeria, COBON, has been entrusted with a pivotal role in Nigeria's construction industry following the transfer of the Sector Skills Council SSC mandate from the National Board for Technical Education NBTE under the National Skills Qualification Framework NSQF. This move places COBON at the forefront of artisan training and skills development in the construction sector. The president of COBON, Dr. Samson Opaloa, announced during a media briefing expressing optimism about the council's new responsibilities. According to Opaloa, the SSC mandate will enable COBON to tackle the skills gap in the construction industry by offering structured training for artisans across Nigeria. The Nigeria Institute of Town Planners (NITP) has decried the shortage of low-income houses in Lagos State. This shortage, according to the chairman of Lagos State chapter of the institute, Mr. Tayo Awomosun, has given rise to high rents and rising homelessness in the metropolis. To address the situation, Awomosun urged the state government to come up with robust policies to address the mounting problems in the housing sector. He also called on the state government to consider the option of direct construction for low-income bracket of the population. This, he said, will significantly increase the available housing stock and relieve pressure on the housing market. Nigeria witnessed 1,574 deaths in 627 reported incidents of building collapse between 1974 and 2024, according to the Building Collapse Prevention Guild. The Guild said in a release that the first recorded building collapse in Nigeria occurred in October 1974 in Oyo State, where a multi-story building collapsed due to excessive loading, killing 27 people. It stated, the Building Collapse Prevention Guild has reported from its record from October 1, 1974 to September 17, 2024, 1,574 deaths occurred in 627 reported incidents of building collapse in Nigeria.
For more housing, finance, and construction news, visit www.africanhousingnews.com. Building materials account for over 60% of a construction project cost in Nigeria, with labor comprising the remaining 40%. According to report, prices for building materials such as roofing sheets, tiles, cement have risen by over 100% in the course of a year. That in turn translates to higher rental and property purchase prices, creating an unsustainable cycle for investors and developers. This and many more contribute to stakeholders' call for local manufacturing of building materials. Watch this.
I am a manufacturer. I was the first person to think of producing POP cement in Nigeria. The first problem we are facing first is access to funds. No deliberate support by government to support some, industries. And second is power. Is another problem. Third is exchange, dollar rate. But like I said earlier, the government should have to design a program with the view to support manufacturers so that it will be easier for them to produce and bring it to the market so that it will support and build our local consumption and even to export it for other countries in Africa and even beyond.
Local manufacturing in Nigeria can be encouraged in several ways. First is incentives. We are in a part of the world that we rely so much on incentives from government, and incentives do not always come in terms of cash. Provision of local amenities, all the necessary facilities that will enhance business to grow. Provision of light, tax-free, they call it tax holiday for local manufacturers. If you encourage local manufacturers to pay less or no tax, it will encourage a lot of people to go into local manufacturing. So if government could provide incentive, then the encouragement of patronage, if you let the citizens know that if you patronage local material, this are likelihood of you getting this type of value from government or from any other means. It encourages local production.
Encouraging local manufacturing in Nigeria lies on the shoulder of both the citizen and the government. From the citizen, we should have the confidence in patronizing local production within the country. And secondly, going back to our government, they should pass policies that will help and assist our local industries.
Always dependent so much on what things are imported. We seem to love the things that come from outside the country than what we have. Incidentally, many of the things that come from outside the country, the raw materials were taken away from Nigeria, from our own soil, to develop them into something else. And I think that through research and development, we can also make the best use of these local resources. At the end of the day, have quality materials that are from within our nation at a reduced cost.
Well, the issue is that we first and foremost have to, make sure the local content in our buildings is paramount. And the federal government has to now try to see what they can do in the importation of building materials to make sure at least they increase the duty so that to encourage the local content here in Nigeria to be able to produce what we can use in our programs, in our housing programs nationwide.
It's for us to start with our mindset and our orientation. The idea that anything that comes from overseas is better than what is home is first a mindset. Secondly, with improvement in things in infrastructure, things like power, it makes it more easier for people to look at local production. And then importantly, to start to patronize our made in Nigeria goods, because that's how you sort of encourage them to do better, to do more, and for more players to get into the industry.
In Nigeria, with the abundance of basic building materials such as clay, laterite, stone, lime, agro-industrial waste, wood, timber, granite, various types of sand including glass sand in their natural state. Housing provision still remains a challenge, especially to the middle and low-income earners. Let's take a look as these experts lend their voices to the adoption of alternative building materials in Nigerian housing sector.
According to the United Nations Center for Human Settlement, it classifies alternative building materials as traditional materials or materials that are not modern or conventional in nature. Experts also attribute the basics of alternative building materials to include recycled content, low embodied energy, natural materials, energy efficiency, non-toxic or less toxic content. With a housing deficit of over 17 million, access to affordable housing has largely stayed a pipe dream for the vast majority of Nigerians, particularly the middle and lower classes, which takes about 80% of the populace. For many, exploring alternative building materials and encouraging local manufacturing of these materials in Nigeria may be the way to go, so as to ease the task of importing and high foreign exchange. Highlighting the factors militating the use of alternative building materials, Dr. Chi Akpoji, board chairperson of Shelter Afrique, noted that there is a huge housing deficit in Nigeria, which she attributed to high cost of building materials.
There is a major deficit of housing, particularly in this economy, Nigeria, that we are in. And so the supply and demand side dynamics contributing to that deficit. And on the supply side, there are several issues at play, one of which is the high cost of building materials. And then the high cost of building materials, one of the recommendations for mitigating that high cost of building materials that will now impact supply of housing will be to consider deploying alternative building materials.
On her part, Akpoji says it is time for Nigeria and Africa at large to embrace available options for alternative building materials, adding that it is the future for housing construction in Africa.
Alternative building options available could also mean going back to what our ancestors used, traditional building materials, which in the olden days there was no issues with housing because people built houses using mud. And I know in some economies on Africa, they've actually reverted back to using mud to build, energy efficient homes. To round it up, I will say the deployment of alternative building technologies is possibly the future of housing construction in Africa, around the world. It's already been done effectively in other economies around the world, in Asia, Latin America, and so on. So it's time we really put our money where our mouth is and begin to look at how effective it can be in addressing the massive housing gaps, the massive housing deficits within Nigeria. People, we need to begin to move away from concrete. I know in my experience in the sector, you talk to people on the street and they tell you, if I knock on the wall and it's hollow, I'm not interested. That means it's not a well-built house. But there are alternatives out there that can not only, provide good accommodation, good housing, but also help to address the supply side issues that has bedeviled the sector for so many years.
Also speaking, Odunayo Ojo, CEO, UPDC PLC, says alternative building materials will help cut costs and encourage the use of local building materials.
There's a lot of advancement now that's going on in terms of technology. There's a lot of research that's going into the adaptation of local building materials, like our traditional building materials, adobe blocks, bricks that we have in abundance in this country. We have a lot of stone, we have a lot of limestone that is quarried here in Nigeria that we can use for construction. We're also seeing a lot of technology in terms of modular housing systems where you can build houses faster by inputting some technology processes in the manufacture of houses. So all those things will cut the cost and make sure that the readily available materials we have in the country is what we are using to build.
CEO TAF Africa Global, Mustafa Nje, in his remark, says there is need to adopt the various options available so as to ensure sustainable development.
Well, alternative it depends on different stages. For example, building the structure. There are different models that is coming around now in the world, I can say, where people are avoiding using sand and cement, because traditionally, brick and mortar, sand and cement is what is known. But some people are coming with initiatives using laterite dust, compacted bricks. Some are even coming with lighter material like polystyrene and then having it plastered. There are so many alternatives that are coming out, and it is coming out because it is an absolute need for this. Some of the things that we're using now is going to be exhausted. I mean, just imagine sand. You're going to run out of sand at one time. So there is a need to think about alternative building materials for sustainable development.
For the purpose of reducing costs, addressing environmental issues, or dealing with lack of conventional materials, it is time for us to embrace available options for alternative building materials in Nigeria, so as to ensure that housing demand meets supply.
We don't have road, and you see at times if it is raining, you will see a lot of people will go by the roadside. There will be throw dirt on the main road. We also doesn't have toilet. You see a toilet, you will still up to 30 tenants. They are using one. You can't leave your door open, go and buy something. Before you will know, Babambola will enter. By the time you will take them to police station, 1 hour is too much. The police people will release them. In fact, we don't know what is happening.
This is the situation with many citizens in not just Nigeria. Are we ready for this conversation? What is the plight of an average Nigerian citizen in regards to housing? Housing is a fundamental human right, and these issues must be addressed.
Welcome back. You're watching Housing Development. Early this year, Festus Adebayo, the Executive Director of Housing Development Advocacy Network, had an interview with engineer Harmony Kunu, a Rwanda-based developer, on ways to mitigate the rising cost of building materials. Bringing back that interview at this time is very necessary. Let's have a look.
My name is Festus Adebayo, and I will be your anchor for this program today. And I have a very wonderful guest in the studio. For the benefit of the viewers seeing you on this program for the first time, I want you to be the one that will introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Festus. My name is Engineer Harmony Kunu of Workers Affordable Property Limited. We are based in Rwanda and equally in Nigeria here.
With your experience in Rwanda and Nigeria, I think you are in the best position to tell us what is going on in the building materials markets.
In terms of the rising cost, I think it's general on all products. I think that is driven by a lot of factors, which include the forex and other factors, that transportation costs and all that. One thing that is missing is the perception about laterite, the use of laterite. In East Africa region, where Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and Tanzania, most of the houses there are built from laterite. So that has a lot of savings, you know, in terms of use of cement.
Now, with your experience, you have done 2 or 3 projects in Rwanda. Tell us how you are able to do that. What exactly are being the role of government in ensuring that this type of challenges of increase in building material prices do not happen?
Some of the institutions there in Rwanda, they've done some research and came up with results. So in order to be able to make those products available,
yes.
For example, the bricks, okay, so they have a brick manufacturing company in Kigali.
Established by
the government.
Okay.
So it's readily available. You can go in there. So government has a role to play to identify, like back to Nigeria, like Nibri. They've done a lot of research. They've been able to come out with beautiful and sustainable products. So the question is, how do we now take this from that level
yes.
to a commercial level? Yes. And also the production should be large enough, you know, to be able to go around. So somebody in Enugu, somebody in Kano, somebody in Akwa Ibom, somebody in Bayelsa, and all that, should be able to have it available to
But you
build their
think,
houses.
I think since we are operating in the same environment, Nibri may also face the same problem of transportation because it's the same road that Dangote trailers are taking, that Nibri product trailers will also be taking.
Well,
and also in the same Nigeria, the electricity issue. So don't you think government need to also do something in the area of enabling environment?
Well, I didn't want to talk about infrastructure.
Yeah.
I think it's a critical need for everything. Even the food we eat, the water we drink, we need enough infrastructure to be able to support that. But I want to stay within the building material gap.
Okay.
And what recommendation, what suggestion we can put forward to help us. So, if the government is serious about ensuring that this product that has been researched and identified and available at NIBRI need to be available to the people, to developers. It means that not just one industry need to be built. It can be 6 industry, 1 per region. It can be multiple of industry that produce that product. It can even be programmed in a way that we produce the product and even sell to Africans. Okay. Because these are products that we believe it's already tested, so they are quality and they are it's a sustainable opportunity, so with that volume of production, if we are targeting Africa, it's also a means of revenue, foreign currency into the country, and a lot of employment to the people.
What is a very big thank you to you for sparing time to be on our program today.
Thank you.
And I hope to see you anytime we invite you again.
So glad you're still with me. The program is Housing Development. The Board of Africa International Housing Show recently paid a custom visit to the GMD of Abuja Investment Company Limited. The discussions were aimed at fostering collaboration on housing development, investment opportunities, and creating sustainable housing solutions in Nigeria. Our correspondent will give more details.
The board of the African International Housing Show, AIHS, paid a courtesy visit to the Group Managing Director, Abuja Investment Company Limited in Abuja. The visit started with a high-level discussion which centers on fostering collaboration between the two entities, focusing on housing development, investment opportunities, and creating sustainable housing solutions for Nigerians. The convener of AIHS, Festus Adebayo, expressed gratitude for the opportunity to meet with the new leadership of AIC. He emphasized on the crucial role of collaboration in addressing Africans' housing challenges.
It's time for us to meet with you to see how we can work together and see how we can increase investment in the area of housing. Housing is key. A man who slept well, when he gets to the office on the second day, his productivity will be different from the man who did not sleep well. And a man who sleeps well will not be going to hospital all the time. So that's why we feel that in Africa International Housing Show, we should put more pressure on the government on the need to create an enabling environment, which is part of what your organization is doing for real estate development. And as you prepare for your next event, which I just commended him for some advert I saw on the street near the minister's office, that's the area that has to do with real estate there. We also be interested.
The group Managing Director of Abuja Investment Company Limited, Ambassador Dr. Maureen Tamuno, expressed her delight in receiving the team from the African International Housing Show, noting their long-standing relationship of over 13 years. Tamuno acknowledged that housing is one of the basic necessities of life, stressing the need for affordable, quality housing in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, where high standards must be maintained.
And Abuja is the Federal Capital Territory, where standards will be met, but they will be affordable for the citizens to be able to have access. That's why we have different districts, different areas for different people, where people can have access to good housing. So we're open to a lot of collaborations, and then we can see, like you said, a lot of things we can discuss and see how to do businesses together and then have a better outing.
The president of the Nigerian Institute of Town Planners, Town Planner Nathaniel Atebije, laid more emphasis on the vitality of a city.
The life of the city or the life of people is on a tripod. Where they live, where they work, and where they recreate. These are the three key issues. And that is to say, where they work has to do with the economy of the city, the formal, the informal, the non-formal. And any city we want to plan, one of the critical areas we study is what we call the economic base of the city. And that is why coming here is so critical, so important to us, that you hold the third essential part of the city, of the tripod, which is the urban economy. And what is it? The urban economy has to do with investments, trades, the things that make people to make use of either their brains, their talents, to create wealth.
The visit ended with a presentation of gifts and photo session.
Visit Housing TV Africa on YouTube and click on the subscribe button. Subscribe to Housing TV Africa to stay updated on latest happenings in Nigeria's housing sector. Follow our social media pages, like and share our posts. On Facebook, Housing TV Africa. On Twitter, Housing TV Africa. Instagram, Housing TV Africa. Join the conversation and keep up with latest housing updates.
One of the most effective ways to achieve affordable housing in Nigeria is through government intervention. The government can provide subsidies or tax breaks to developers who build affordable housing units. The government can also implement policies that encourage the development of affordable housing, such as reducing the cost of land and providing infrastructure like roads, water and electricity. Providing these basic infrastructures is very fundamental to creating affordable housing. This is because it makes for cost reduction on the developer while serving as a great motivator for home seekers. Many times, investors look out for these basic amenities before choosing a destination for their investment, and so having it in place will greatly enhance home ownership for Nigerians. On that note, I call it a wrap on today's episode of Housing Development. Thanks for watching. I remain Florani, your housing diva. See you soon.